The Shooting Range. In this episode, Pages of History, the birth of the Soviet jet aviation. Round study, penetrating the Ferdinand. And metal beasts, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Let's take another look at the classic vehicles. Today, we'd like to talk about a curious machine that has been in the game for a while. Please welcome the two-engined French MB-175T torpedo carrier, found at the battle rating of 3.3. Back in 1940, the French Naval Air Force gave an eye to the promising MB-175 bomber, and soon after the war, they commissioned 100 of them, but reworked to be torpedo carriers, hence the T in the name. Its power plant is two 14-cylinder radial engines. Between the wing spars, we can see self-sealing fuel tanks. Its main armament includes two 20mm autocannons with 200 rounds of ammo each. Another gun provides some defense for rear side of machine. For suspended armaments, you can choose between rockets and a torpedo. But today, we aren't going to talk about the torpedo, or any suspended armament at all, since this machine behaves like any other counterpart in mixed battles. In air battles, however, it can and will surprise you, even despite being a torpedo carrier. One turret and two fixed cannons turn this otherwise mostly harmless bomber into a real fire battery. And by the way, these cannons are no household nail guns. They're the famous MG-151, the same as those found on most German fighters. We recommend you choose the anti-air ammo belt, since it's full of Minengeschloss rounds with enough explosives in them to tear apart air targets of any size. When used sparingly, your ammo pool will last you 4 to 5 enemies. The only disadvantage these guns have is that they've placed far from the fuselage, meaning you will need to practice your skills a little. Moreover, this plane spawns at 3.5 kilometers of altitude, a nice class bonus that makes enemy bombers your #1 priority. Having started the round, gain even more altitude at an angle of between 5 and 7 degrees, flying straight towards the enemy. Once you see your first targets, level the machine and speed up for an attack. Your altitude is still higher than any enemy fighters, which means the hunting season is on. With this machine's sturdiness, you can easily perform boom and zoom attacks, and if the enemy dodges you, dogfights are an option too. With some speed, it can even duel some single-engine fighters. The MB-175T has a large wing area, good elevators, and powerful high-lift devices. The main drawback is the climb rate. If you need to get close to the ground in your game, you're unlikely to get a chance to climb back up. If you find yourself close to the ground with little speed left, you've only got two options. One, test your luck in a frontal attack. You've got enough survivability to sustain a few hits, unless, of course, a random round hits the poorly protected pilot, of course. Two, you can position your plane with the tail to the attacker and try to hit them with a turret. The first Soviet jets appeared only after the war was over and looked a lot like some of the already existing Western tech. So, wait, did they just copy what they've captured or bought from their allies? Or was there something else? After all, the USSR quickly became one of the leaders of the world jet aviation. One does not simply jumpstart right into the lead just by copying the work of others. Let's figure it all out. The first time a Soviet engineer formulated the idea of a jet engine happened as early as in 1929, when Boris Stechkin published an article called The Theory of an Air-Jet Engine. Extensive research followed, although the war slowed it down a bit, of course. Then came another engineer, Arkhip Lyulka. He continued the development of a turbojet engine with a team of other jet enthusiasts. A couple of years later, in the first half of 1944, the prototype became real enough to require a plane to work with. And old ideas wouldn't do here. So a few aircraft engineers received an offer to create a completely new machine for this engine. And one of such engineers was Pavel Sukhoi. Let's take a look at his first jet fighter. Looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? Something like the Schwalbe? Very much so. Maybe even like the Gloucester Meteor as well? Sure. How about the Kika? Right? That one too. So, did Sukhoi just copy all of these machines? Well, no. That would actually be quite tricky, since the design of his firstborn jet had been finished in the same year of 1944, with the plan for the first prototype to be released by the end of 1945. Basically, even if Sukhoi had known about the first classified German and British jet fighters, the data that he would have been able to get could only have been some verbal descriptions, a couple of sketches, and maybe some partial specs. Sure, the Su-9 had a similar general layout to the German Schwalbe, but the details, the crucial details, weren't similar at all. The Soviet fighter's wing was two-spar and had none of the German pseudo-swept-wing nonsense. Not to mention that Sukhoi never tried to implement an elliptical nose section, or spindle shapes either. In fact, the Su-9's layout looks much closer to the Japanese Kika, but it's even more unlikely that Sukhoi could even hear anything about that one in 1944, since Japan was always good at keeping secrets. Strange as it sounds, but while the Japanese engineers learned from the Schwalbe's experience in correcting their mistakes, Sukhoi somehow managed not to make them in the first place. Okay, the next question then. Why did they make two planes? The Su-9 and the Su-11? The answer is simple. The Soviet Union managed to acquire some captured German Jumo 004 engines right after the war, and decided to test them on the new plane while Lyulka's TR-1 engine design was being polished. The model that later received the polished engines was called the Su-11. The engineers decided to curve the spars, much like on the British Meteor, and put the engine inside the wing. The first years after the devastating war were too tough to launch a mass production of these machines, but they'd become an important step for the Soviet Union. Thanks to them, in a matter of just a few years, the USSR would close the gap in jet technology and even make it back to the Leaders Club. Yeah, but that's a story for another time. Previous round study section, we discussed, rounds. Now let's take an opposite approach and talk about armor, or, to be more precise, about its vulnerabilities against various weapons. Please welcome our test subject today, the Ferdinand. This German has got impressive armor, 200 millimeters in the front of the hull, and almost no vulnerable areas in the combat compartment. It's invulnerable to many guns like the American 76mm ones and the Soviet 85mm ones. The only chance for them is to shoot at the side cheeks of the hull. A good shot might ignite the machine and incapacitate the driver or the gunner. Other frequent encounters with the Ferdinand happen to be the American M41 and the T-92 light tanks. Their armor-piercing, discarding sabot rounds have more than 200 millimeters of penetration. Still, if you want to be certain about destroying the Ferdinand, you need to shoot at the very edge of the compartment, right in the ammo racks. The APDS can handle the front armor all right, but additional armor plates on the inside will stop any attempt to hit the stowage or the crew. The Pershing's 90mm gun performs much better though. When using the APC-BC rounds, your only chance is to hit the same side cheeks of the hull, but the APC-R shots have enough penetrating power against the beefy Ferdinand. They can even reach the crew after going through the front. The disadvantage is that the shot doesn't produce a lot of fragments, which means you need some sharp shooting to hit the crew. Now, what other calibers do we have here? The 100mm Soviet gun, of course. Its APC-BC rounds can easily penetrate the casemate and even damage the engine through the frontal armor. We've talked in detail about the armor-piercing 122mm rounds last time, so there's no need to reiterate. Moreover, this gun has a powerful HE round in stock. If you aim it at the lower part of the hull, it penetrates the roof, damages the engine, and sets the machine on fire. If you encounter a Ferdinand and it's not looking directly at you, with a slight angle, you can blow up its ammo racks with a single hit. To do that, you need to aim at the mudguard above the back road wheel. Now, how about the British guns? The 17-pounder and the 20-pounder guns have rounds that can easily handle the frontal armor, so the only task left is to hit the ammo or the crew. Finally, let's talk about vulnerabilities. We have to say they're small and hard to hit, so there might be no point in trying to spend too much time on them in real battle. Still, if you get a chance to surprise your enemy, why not? For instance, there's a small bump where the hull's plates meet the casemate. It's easy to see in the analysis. Penetrating 80mm of barely sloped armor poses no problem to almost all rounds at this BR. Another area is the roof of the casemate. The gunner's optics is a great place for a large caliber HE round to land, with a devastating effect, of course. Finally, the ring around the gun. If you hit it with an AP round, you can damage both the barrel and the breech, which will disarm the enemy and give you more time to finish them off. That's it for this tank. We'll be happy to see other machines you want us to analyze. Meanwhile, it's time to answer some of your questions. The first question was sent by a player called Infinity. Why can't you drop bombs above Mach 1? Hi. Dropping bombs at speeds beyond Mach 1 is rarely possible due to some technical limitations. Once the bomb leaves the hard point going supersonic, it can either self-destruct or jump unpredictably, damaging the plane in the process. That's why there's only a handful of machines capable of supersonic bombing. Alessio Stoner asks, how can I see my ammo count in air battles? Hello Alessio, go to Options, Battle Interface, and choose Always in the Ammo Indication drop-down menu. Done. Now you'll see the remaining ammo in the top left corner. Another question comes from Haika251. Are the skins on the WT Live page visible to my teammates or enemies? Hi there. The skins on War Thunder Live are only seen by you, but we also choose the best works with each update and add them to the trophy section, which means you can earn or buy them. Skins from the trophy section are visible to everyone. Hansen Henry writes, "What are the funny-looking wires on the nose of the German attackers, such as the Me-410 B6/R3? Hi, Hansen. Those wires are actually the radar antenna for locating the enemy in the dark." And the last comment for today was written by B. Seption Surya Saputra 1944. What's a mouthful? Can you tell me the story how the Soviet get Tu-4 that have similarities to the B-29 Superfortress? Hi there. We've actually shared this story in the Shooting Range episode 148. Check it out if you missed it. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Come on, you lot, subscribe and click that bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to check your speed before dropping bombs. Leave a like, because you do. Share your thoughts, because we want them, and comments as well. And we'll see you next week.